Oh, well, guys, I think we've got a little bit of drama. Well, the Maximilian dudes controversy blew up. I think I saw this on Twitter. At least snippets. This is my hero. Hey, we're going in. This is about Final Fantasy. So, I've been a Final Fantasy fan and player for a good bit, right? A good bit. And as far as I'm aware, at least if I'm wrong, Maximilian is known for disliking JRPGs. I could be wrong. That's all I know. I think he's mostly a fighting game player, as far as I'm aware. Regardless, we're going in. We'll listen to this. See, I've been playing Final Fantasy, I think, for quite some time, right? I have, though. To be fair, I have dropped everything after Lightning Returns because, see, I love Final Fantasy 13 and all the 13 games, but I can also admit that they're not Final Fantasy games. I think Final Fantasy is at its best when it is turn-based. I don't like the current Final Fantasy. I don't even consider them to be Final Fantasy games. It's like right, the same problem I have with Assassin's Creed, where like right, everything after like starting with Origin, I don't consider these games to be Assassin's Creed games. They are RPGs. They are no longer Assassin's Creed games. Though I think Assassin's Creed might actually is still an RPG. I think it falls still on the RPG umbrella. But like you get the idea. I don't know. I don't like the more RPG focus when I significantly prefer like the assassin part, right? And yeah, that's all though. We'll go in. Also, please consider liking, subscribing. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Every little bit of support matters. We recently just reached 3.1k. Let's make it more. Thank you. But yeah, let's hear it.
YouTuber and streamer Maximilian Dude has been in the news on Twitter for the last number of days. This big controversy all started with this clip regarding the Final Fantasy VII remakes. This user captioning the tweet of the
And I also don't believe that the remakes. I wouldn't even call it a remake, right? It's a reimagining of Final Fantasy VII. There's a lot. There's no real remake. You're not remaking this game, right? You're not using. It feels like they're not particularly using the original FF7 as a basis. They are essentially doing a reimagining, and I really don't like it. I really don't like it. Sid is very much there. He's a different character, right? I forgot what the lion name was. Honestly, it's been a while since I've played FF7. We should probably stream that. Honestly, if you didn't know, I stream daily. We're playing games anyway. And I think also I don't like this like split up in three parts. I'm just not a fan of it. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it. Right. I do hope that eventually, right, if they do sell them as a collection, I hope that it happens soon once they're completely done with it. But yeah, I feel like it's just not what I was hoping for, right? It's just not what I was hoping for. That's all. That's all really. It's just not what I was hoping for. Then there have been issues with censorship. It's also not selling super well, apparently, right? How do we know? Square Enix had layoffs quite often recently, so they're not doing as well as they could, right? I think the downfall with Final Fantasy started with 12, and that is when the original creator left Square. I think that where the problems are. Though honestly, 12 is still a good Final Fantasy. It is still a good game. It's just not a good Final Fantasy. The same goes with 13, 13-2, Lightning Returns. 14 is a good game, right? Correction. 14 is the MMO, right? 15 is a good game, right? It's a great game, right? 16 is also a great game. They're just not Final Fantasy games.
clip as Max is spitting 100% complete facts. It's always just been a vocal minority that chooses to be toxic. And I'll never be gaslit into believing it's this massive 50-50 divide grifters try to paint it out as.
F the haters. I mean, I get it if
I don't really take people seriously that use the word grifter because they usually don't know what it means. Like, what are you? If it's like, see, the thing is, like, if it's a minority, right, as this person said, right, then there's nothing to grift to, right? There's nothing to grift to. If it's a minority, you cannot grift to something, right? Well, you can, but it'd be a financial loss. This doesn't make sense.
games like have people that are disappointed with it, but the reality of the situation is that this is the best reviewing JRPG. This is the best reviewing.
The fact that he does not know that it is a JRPG is concerning. You want to talk about this game, yet you have even no idea what you are playing, which just tells me that you have no knowledge. You lack the knowledge to even argue in this. I'm sorry, but yes, it's a Japanese RPG, so it is a JRPG. Shocking, I know. Pokemon is a JRPG. Did you know that? Like, how do you... Anyway, like, I feel like, right, it's like you playing a shooter not knowing that it is a shooter. What?
Square Enix game. It's the only one.
Also, I wouldn't really talk about reviews. Modern reviewers are absolute dog shit. They're not even reviewers. They don't even play the game. They die in tutorials. They cannot pronounce the character's name. They have not played the games.
Ones that have ever been nominated for Game of the Year in the past 20 plus years.
That is not a really good indicator. That is not a good indicator of whether a game is good or not. There are games that are very blatantly not that good, but they still get put into Game of the Year. I don't think so. I don't think that Game of the Year awards are a good indicator of whether a game is good or not.
Like, people are allowed to not like it, you know, but to make it seem like they're the majority, you're not, like, at all. Like, very large majority of people, like, are really into this shit.
I gotta say, citing Game of the Year as evidence of your argument really is not a great approach. I mean, who cares? Oh, it got Game of the Year. Literally, who cares about that? Now, that tweet did get 10,000 likes, but there was still a lot of duality, such as top quotes that read, Max really hates different opinions to stuff he really enjoys and or gets paid for, lol. Another one saying, gee, I wonder why the content creator who's given special treatment by Capcom and Square Enix is positive towards Capcom and Square Enix products. It must be because they're just that good, huh? In the first screenshot, we have Maximilian.
I'm currently not a fan of Square Enix at all. Or Square Enix, no matter, depending on how you wanna call it. Because of recent issues with censorship. I'm not a fan of it, right? Like, imagine you go back to FF7 Remake, the first one, right? And you have to censor Tifa years after the fact. I am sorry, but I do not like Square Enix. It's that simple.
Interviewing the Final Fantasy VII Remake's director Hamaguchi. And in the second screenshot, we can see that for Dragon's Dogma 2, Maximilian was made into an official pawn in the game. And this response reading, I respect Maximilian, but these remakes are also the highest budgeted and most marketed JRPGs in history. And yet they have completely failed to expand the Final Fantasy fanbase, which is in fact...
See, it goes even further, right? Dragon Quest, right? I'm a huge Dragon Quest fan. I think it is arguably in many aspects superior to Final Fantasy in its current state. I think the Dragon Quest products are better. But even here we have seen censorship of the HD 2D remakes. Right? That is a problem. I don't like that. I don't like that they switched out the more darker tone that Dragon Quest 12 was supposed to have for what we have right now. Like, you get the idea, right? I'm currently not really right. That was also like they had their own fucking DEI department. I'm not trusting these people at all. That's all.
Shrinking, as the majority don't hate these, they simply don't care for them. And then another user would respond to the OP, the initial tweet that we saw with the initial clip, and they would post, "Here, more spittin' for you." Absolutely horrendous grammar, but we'll take a look at the clips.
If anything, a lot of this weird FF7 drama, and it's not even drama. It's like I actually go and I check. Like, it's the same thing with every single mega criticism I see of the Final Fantasy VII Remake series. It's like a small group of people don't like something. It's like, yeah, okay. And then there's a massive congregation of people that are like realizing how much they love it, you know?
And here's the second clip.
The highest reviewed Square Enix game that is like internal Final Fantasy since like the fucking PS2, since FF10. Yeah, literally FF10. But game sucks. Nobody likes it. Moving on. Game actually is terrible.
And the third clip.
What the internet has...
Like, the thing is, like, right? Okay, so Remake Part 1, right? 3.5 million copies in the first 3 days. Overall, hitting 8.7 million units. Right? Okay. Which, by the way, is not... probably isn't even the high... It's probably not even the highest selling one. Final Fantasy, right? And then the Rebirth, right? And this is where it hits hard. Roughly sold 2 to 3 million copies in its early weeks. Square also noted it underperformed some internal expectations. That means it underperformed. If a successful series, as you call it, underperforms, there is a slight problem. And I can guarantee you that the third one might still underperform. Right? The third one was still underperform, right? What's the highest selling Final Fantasy? 10. 10. I'm not surprised that it is 10, right? I'm not surprised that it is 10. Right? I'm always surprised. It's 10 and 10-2 a combination, probably. So it's 10 and 10-2 are always sold in bundles recently in general, which makes sense. 20 million copies. That is your highest selling Final Fantasy, and arguably 10 is probably the best Final Fantasy. I don't think any other Final Fantasy competes with that, except maybe 7, the OG 7. And then OG 7, 14.1 to 16 million copies. Across original, re-releases, and bundles. Very interesting. Very interesting. Anyway, you get the idea, right? It's not... It's barely, right? Remake is barely in the top 5, probably. So, like, this argument of, like, oh, it's selling so well, it isn't. It isn't. If people still, to this day, buy Final Fantasy X, and there's a reason, right? Everywhere there's Final Fantasy X bundles. Everywhere. It is, it's being thrown at you. Literally, right? It's sold for cheap. It's sold in bundles, right? With FF10 too. Sorry. But if your most successful game is from the PS2 era, you did something wrong. That's my opinion. You did something wrong.
Proven to me is that you'll find something that is universally beloved, and people seemingly like everybody loves this shit, right? And you'll find a corner of the internet that is dedicated to how awful it is. Even though like 90, 95, like very large percentage is there, and they're trying to that percentage is trying to tell all the people that are around them actually.
And well, if you look at FF13, right? Let's look at FF13. 6.63 million units. Remake isn't that far away from that. So this doesn't really work. This doesn't really work.
Was bad. Shit. Damn. Wow. I guess Back to the Future does suck.
And these clips got responses like, quote unquote, weird Final Fantasy VII drama. There's nothing weird with the majority of fans of the original game not liking this censored modern audience of the game, Max.
All right, yeah, modern audience, right? It also got millennial writing. Stop.
What's weird is pretending that the game is 95% the same as the original. The 95% thing is referring to another clip, which we'll play in a moment.
It is not even close to the same game. Characters have been changed to fit a more sensitive audience, right? That gets triggered easily, right? There's no scene in FF7 Remake where Tifa calls Cloud a retard and is supposed to climb up that ladder, right? Aerith is still alive when she's supposed to be dead, which is one of the most major important plot points in the original 7. And did that hit that hard back then, right? Because you love this character, you grew with this character, and then she just gets stabbed. That isn't happening. So what's the problem here?
Let's take a look at some more responses to these first before we move on. Another one reading, I wish people would have realized by now that content creators who are industry insiders don't have their own opinions. They have the opinions that the industry need them to have so they can keep their access to the industry. They do PR and marketing in exchange for access. He fails to realize that there's a large group of people that justifiably dislike what Square Enix did with the Final Fantasy VII remakes. Rebirth's sales reflect that. SC divided fans by turning what should have been a faithful remake into modern audience KH fanfiction milked BS. However, some more duality as this response defends Max, writing, yep, and that is why the internet and what people post on it isn't what the real world thinks. Max is spot on with his takes about the Final Fantasy VII Remake series. Square Enix is hitting a lot of people in a good way with this series, more than what the minority will say. As for the 95% clip, that takes us here, captioned, it's 95% the same as classic FF7, quote unquote, somebody who was lying to their audience.
And FF7 Rebirth tackles its overall approach to story the same way that Remake does, where about 95% of this game is pretty much classic.
It is not. It is not. It is not. I would not consider it a remake. It is a reimagining of Final Fantasy VII. And it's inferior. It is just outright inferior. I'm going to say it the way it is. It is inferior.
Classic FF7 1-to-1.
This got a response that reads, he isn't lying. The story is practically identical to the original. I've played it multiple times, unlike you. The only difference is they added this sequel multiverse thing going on, which I certain will have a very satisfying ending to it. The OP responding saying, I've played Remake and Rebirth twice, each in English and Japanese. I also have 1,000s of hours in the OG game in English and Japanese. The only way anybody could say, quote, the only difference is they added a sequel multiverse thing going on, which I certain will have a very satisfying ending to it, is if they are lying or pretending to be retarded to protect their cringe slop game. And Maximilian Dude himself would respond,
or they have outright played the original FF7. Which is more than likely true. Because every time people criticize something or defend something or talk about something, they have never actually, either they don't read, either they don't consume the material that they're talking about, which I believe Maximilian either does not, he didn't pay attention, or he's outright lying, which is probably the more likely case here.
Directly to that tweet, that clip, the 95% one, saying with the caption, want to see a magic trick? Here's the full clip from years ago. Only seconds after an explanation where I completely agree with several criticisms of the story and how it's not handled well in many ways. This one being a 2-minute clip, let's take a look at the full thing.
There's another thing that leads into, as I finish up this personal review on the game that is not spoilery, that starts to get into spoilers but isn't, is is storytelling. And FF7 Rebirth tackles its overall approach to story the same way that Remake does, where about 95% of this game is pretty much classic FF7 one-to-one. Almost like all of this game is a lovely preservance of OG FF7 and a massive expansion therein. This game, as well as Remake, have a big issue in terms of its, I'd say, larger overscaling plot feeding to the audience. And I don't think it's scaled well. It doesn't take time to like give you a little bit of space to absorb what's happening, right? You need to give me a little bit of space to like acknowledge what this is and what's going on. But I have to be critical. We all know that like Zach is in the game. That's not a spoiler. He's in the first 5 minutes. My dude, my criticism is that we don't get any updates on that part of the game for 30 hours. Again, this is almost a criticism of the original game, because the original game,
it is not. It is not. It is not.
The time space that we are taking FF7 here, the middle part of FF7, right after Midgar, point B to point C, you know, C to D, all that kind of stuff. You kind of go from one spot to another, and each spot in between, you visit a character's backstory, right? And this game doesn't have all of the Disc 2 elements, or any of the Disc 2 elements. And I feel like that just might be one of my biggest criticisms of the game, is that the way they distributed a lot of the story in this is all put in the end, and we just don't get enough time to like absorb. We just needed a bit more time to be like, oh, so that's what that is, and sit on it a bit. And then they show you some.
The original game just gives you context on what personality Cloud has taken on. Because remember, the issue, the mental struggle with Cloud is that he essentially took on somebody else's life, somebody else's role. He isn't Cloud. Throughout most of the game, he is Cloud with Zack's personality or Zack's mentality. That is the problem. That is the struggle. That is Cloud's major struggle. It's him versus the version that he acts out to be. I feel that is sorely lacking in the remakes.
Something new in the end, right? Or something new as the game progresses a little bit forward. So anyway.
This user responding to the clip that Max posted, and Max also responding to the user. Let's get the context. They said, in the spirit of fairness, most people were disagreeing with the notion of it being, quote, 95% the same as the OG game, on quote. Clipping culture is frustrating, and extra context is great, but the criticisms you presented doesn't address the original claim that many are disagreeing with. To which Max responded saying, story beats being 95% is the OG. Isn't that just true? That's the majority of the game's story is like the OG, with approximately 5% new wacky ghost stuff / slight adjustments. Let's take a look at some responses to that. The other person said, attributing the wacky ghost stuff as being approximately 5% is going to be the point of contention here. Many are going to understandably disagree that those aspects are only 5% of a difference, not to mention other new plot stuff. Max then said, I'm talking time on screen where we spend retreading OG FF7 and spend time with the new stuff. It's no joke around 95%. That last 5% is huge lasting implications, mind you, but we spend the majority of the time doing the same stuff. I wish it changed more, to be honest. Other guy saying, fair. But it's also fair to acknowledge that the words you used in the clip and even in the larger context isn't specifically referring to time on screen, quote unquote, only. People are going to hear 95% the same and plug in what they understand same to mean. The discourse, of course, just continuing from there. A lot of discourse about this.
I also don't understand the argument of 95% is the same. Let's argue 95% is the same. If the 5% are so that apply that much of a big change that people don't like it, that people throw away the entire remake, then there is a problem here. See, the amount that has changed is not the problem. The way you either present it, which he doesn't talk about that at all, right? Because just because the story is the same doesn't mean it's presented in the exact same way. Also, the 5%, if they are lasting, if they have big consequences for the game, then that doesn't matter. Because how much is different doesn't mean or is not tied to how big the impact of what is different is. It doesn't understand this.
As mentioned, this has been news for literally days at this point in time. The discourse just going on and on and on. YouTuber Sebi Webbs would eventually chime into all this stuff, saying, "People accuse me of cherry picking bad scenes from the FF7 remake trilogy."
I like this guy, by the way. I really do. I like this dude. Right? I think he's great. Right? I like his takes. I do agree with his takes more often than not.
In their defense, I love these clips. One, they are funny and short. Two, they show how painfully different these remakes are from the original Final Fantasy VII 1997, but they're also 1 minute each, I get it. So here are side-by-side comparison videos of every major scene in OG FF7 with FF7R. Links in replies. He links to a number of videos he made on this topic. One is like 35 minutes long, the other one's like almost 2 hours long, so yeah, this video is already way longer than I normally make. I like to make my 20-second videos, finish there real quick, you know what I mean? Okay, maybe not 20 seconds. That might have been like 2020 here, hey. But this is to say I'm not going to be watching this stuff to make this video. It's going to, take hours and hours. But nevertheless, this is something to consider watching on the channel Sebi Webbs.
Yeah, he definitely points out very strongly how different the games are, right? He very much does that, and they are very much different in presentation of characters, how the characters act, right? But even like the story is close to what it's not close, but it's like the overall premise is still there. The presentation, however, is outrageous. The way Sid is the lion's name Red? I think it is. I could be wrong. Anyway, that character's completely different. Like, it's not even the same. Anyway, you get the idea.
And he would post 4 short examples. All of them are like a minute long, as mentioned. I'm not going to play all 4 examples, but, well, let me rephrase. I will play all 4 examples, but I'm not going to play the full clips. I'm going to speed it up for you. Cut to the chase, as they say.
Why they're all bald? Why they're all bald? That's a new one.
Let's take a little bit of your house since I was, what, 7, 8?
Isn't really mine, though.
Hello, dear. May I help you?
Actually, Kingdom Hearts might have not been that wrong. Kingdom Hearts might have not been that. Hello, Disney. They get worse the more I see.
Boss, your guests are here. Woo! Hell yeah! Allow me to welcome you to my desert oasis, Cloud.
Now, those clips seem like a pretty good example of less
95% the same, huh? Very much the same. What is this presentation? See, that's what I'm saying. It's the presentation.
being more. The original did less, but it felt more impactful. Interesting how that can work. And keep in mind, those were just 3 quick examples, but there's apparently a lot more changes and many more significant changes, including to major plot points that have been a big point of contention around the remakes for years. For example, one of the biggest points of contention, and so spoiler alert if you care about the remakes and you don't want to get spoiled, this is a big spoiler coming up in 3, 2, 1, is how they handled Aerith's death. This is a 2-minute and 47-second long clip that Sebi has posted to Twitter, so let's take a look at this. But also keep in mind that he's apparently still got like hours worth of content talking about all the various changes on his actual channel, Here's the clip.
What did they do with Eris's death? What did they not do with Eris's death? Is actually the more appropriate question. Spoil it. You really want me to spoil what happens with Eris's death in FF7 Remake, in Rebirth? Okay, well, first of all, Cloud shows up, and she's surrounded by a billion fate ghosts, like a billion fucking whispers. Then Sephiroth comes down out of the sky, and Cloud parries the attack. He blocks the sword move. Then the party shows up, and Cloud's holding Eris in his arms, and she's alive, and she's dead. No, wait, she's dead. And Cloud's like, oh no, I'm sad. And then Eris's hand touches his cheek. She's like, don't worry, I'm alive, uwu. Cloud's like, whoa, we're having children. Then you fight Genova, and then Cloud gets sucked into a parallel universe where Zack from Crisis Core shows up. Zack was also living in a parallel universe earlier in Rebirth. Then Cloud and Zack team up, and they do a double Hadouken against Sephiroth. They do a cross slash like in Rurouni Kenshin. And Sephiroth says, Lamau, thanks to that. And then he tells Zack to fuck off to another dimension. In that dimension, Zack fights a giant Sephiroth head that's floating on the edge of a giant church in space. In the meantime, Cloud then fights Safer Sephiroth, one of the final bosses from Disc 3, because why not? It's a free country. So Cloud solos Safer Sephiroth until Safer Sephiroth says, fuck off, I'm gonna go fight the rest of the party for a bit. Then you have a raid battle where it's like your good old-fashioned FF14, big raid arena, boss floating at the edge like that. Sephiroth does don't stand in the triangles, then he does don't stand in the circles, then he does don't stand in the lines. Then Zack gets thrown into another parallel dimension, and, you know, since
95% the same. 95% the same, my ass.
Zack is basically Sora, Titus, and Prompto all rolled into one, but he looks cooler. He's like, ha, see ya! Because that's what you do when you get thrown into a parallel universe. Then the party all sits there looking sad because Eris is dead by the water, and Cloud's like, oh, hey, Eris, who's sitting right next to him. Glad you're not dead. She's like, don't worry, Cloud, I'm alive, uwu. Zack sits in a church in a parallel universe. Is like, well, that was crazy. And then they are sitting around the High Wind while, oh no, the Tiny Bronco, which Sid is fixing up, humming. Then Eris walks up next to them, and Red 13 notices her energy, but he can't see her. Cloud says, hey, don't look up, everyone, because the sky's split in half, and everyone looks up and there's no split, and then they all just think he's crazy. They all get on a plane, and Eris in Cloud's mind, or in a parallel universe, possibly Eris from Advent Children, who knows, says, okay, don't worry, Cloud, I'll stop Meteor. And he's like, no worries, uwu. And then he gets on the plane, they fly away. Basically what happens at the end of Disc 1 in the original FF7. Yeah, I would say that's roughly 95% the same. I would say that was exactly what you should have expected from a remake of FF7. That's what happens, all right? That's what happens.
Sounds like he's clearly being facetious at the end there.
Obviously, right? He's just like, this is not what I expected, right? Which is why I never got it. Which is why I have no intention of getting it, right? The only Final Fantasy that I really liked, out of like more modern one, I still, like I said, I still like 13. I love the 13 trilogy, right? Because the characters are fun, in my opinion, right? I like Caius a lot, right? I also like the monster taming aspect, right? I'm a Pokemon player, and monster taming games are my thing, right? So, right, and you can make the monsters pretty broken in that game. Anyway, the core issue is that is not 95% the same.
And this takes us back to Maximilian, as Maximilian would go on to make this tweet that reads, in today's video, we tackle several of the issues that Final Fantasy VII R and Rebirth have had, in hopes for improvements in quality of life for Part 3. Hope you enjoy this criticism of the games in this completely new video. Also being facetious there at the end, because the video is actually 3 months old. So this seems to be his response of sorts to people saying that he hasn't criticized the game. He's like, yeah, I've actually criticized it 3 months ago. That is essentially his response, if I'm understanding this correctly. Now, this video itself is 16 minutes long, so I won't be playing anything from here, but you can also find that again on Maximilian's channel. As for my opinion, well, you guys know, I'm just not a remake sort of guy. I haven't played these. I have no interest in them. It's nothing specific to this game. Like I said, I just don't engage with remakes ever, really. Kind of like a personal policy of mine, just not interested. Doesn't matter if it's an anime remake, a game remake, a
Remakes can be good. Remakes can be good, right? Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are fantastic remakes of the original. They don't change anything, and they mostly add, right? Nothing has changed, right? They mostly add. For anime, Dragon Quest Dai, right? The original Dragon Quest Dai anime was never properly finished, right? The remake is good, right? The remake is great. A fantastic shonen anime. If you want some alternatives to like Dragon Ball or Naruto or I guess Gacha Kuda is a shonen, if I'm not wrong. Anyway, you get the idea, right? The remakes can be good. It's just that those remakes aren't good. That's really it. This remake isn't good.
Movie remake, a TV show remake, just not my sort of thing. If you like them, that's cool. I'm just saying, ain't for me, which is totally fine. And for anyone that made it to the end of the video, I'll leave you with a little bit of trivia. While I do like Final Fantasy VII, my favorite Final Fantasy game of all time has got to be Final Fantasy IX. But ultimately, that is the latest.
Good. Yeah.
Let me know what you think about all that stuff. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the video.
Understandable. Final Fantasy IX is also peak. Same with I think like every Final Fantasy before 12 is peak. And then there is Final Fantasy 12 and then everything after. Right. Most of these aren't even bad games. They're just not good Final Fantasy games. Like I said, I think Final Fantasy does work best when it is turn-based. I think that is the decision. Just like I think that the Tales of series is best with the combat system that it had before Zestiria. Possibly Bazeria, right? I don't really like the Zestiria battle system. I don't like it. It's weird. I do. I think that like with Xillia, we got the closest I would want, right? I think Symphonia also did it really well. Probably it's still probably the best Tales game. They have still not. It's the same issue, right? These modern JRPGs, they try to mix up the formula and it completely fucks up the way the games are perceived. That's really it, right? But anyway, yeah, I've yapped enough. There's not much to say. I think the remake is not good. At least not a good Final Fantasy. And yeah, we'll see if part 3 gets any better. It probably won't. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.